Griffin Wild Black. Here I am with my friend and a colleague in life, Dr. Lawrence J. Almost did it, bro.
You know what though?
Lawrence
But you caught it. You caught it.
I've had to pull it back.
You're like, you had that little flinch, and you're like, nope, coming back.
Can't do it. But it's good to see you, brother. How's it? We were talking a little before we got on. You out there? I was going to see New Orleans, but you're out there in Baltimore.
Baltimore, man. Baltimore's interesting. I said that like black people say interesting, like it's interesting. You're like, which is really just a euphemism for
my date last
there's
night.
There's a whole bunch of crackheads out in this joint. I'm like, because one of my friends said, he goes, Baltimore, it's not really crack in Baltimore. And I'm like, I'm intrigued. I'm like, what are we talking about? He's like, well, the problem with Baltimore is a heroin town. Heroin, right? I was like, oh, really? I was like, I didn't know that. I was like, but then I was like, that clarifies a lot for me about why Baltimore is the way it is. I was like, and he like, because when you're on heroin, you don't see people out at night in Baltimore, which is true. The streets are derelict.
Okay.
It's like a ghost town. Because I didn't know this, but when you talk to folks who I guess are informed about these things, when you're on heroin, after you shoot up in the morning, I know. Let me say it properly. When you're on heroin, you shoot up in the morning, I guess, and then you nod out the rest of the day. You enjoying your high, and then you get up in the morning because you got to get right. So there's a whole lot of hustle and bustle in Baltimore up until about 2:00 in the afternoon. Because I guess you're trying to make the money to be able to go get your fix, and then you nod out the rest of the day. And I'm not trying to make fun of drug addiction, but it was like, but it explained a lot about how Baltimore be moving, because it didn't make any sense to me. I'm like, I was like, I get how Chicago moves. I get how a place like Houston moves. I was like, I don't get Baltimore. And there's a whole lot of discomfort with not knowing how it moves. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No,
it's like, so it's an interesting place. And by the way, our conference, I'm here for a conference. The conference is up on Morgan State University's campus.
Okay.
Had never been there. Had never been to North Baltimore. Campus is gorgeous, bunch of new buildings. I mean, they building. So shout out to the Prez for whoever they are for what they're doing on the campus. They've been very inviting, and all that good stuff. So,
that's good to hear, because for some of you who know both of us know that I used to be more active in the Association of Black Psychologists. That's the conference you're at. And there was always talk about having conferences in conjunction with HBCUs, Morgan State being one of them. But during my time, there was really no action on it. There was a lot of talk. But it's good to hear there's some action on that finally.
Yeah, it is. And this is actually the second year. Last year we were at Bethune-Cookman, which is also a really good experience. And I think, I think we still got a long way to go in sort of normalizing what these experiences will be. But I think, the energy of being on a college campus and, talking to young scholars and having young scholars see, a bunch of folks who have earned degrees and are out doing things professionally, I think it's probably great. And supporting HBCUs, supporting Black-owned businesses, as we are an organization. I think we're starting to walk our talk a little bit more than we had. There are growing pains with it,
Yeah, of course.
It's a lot of change, but I think it's a great positive step that we're making. So happy to support, and again, I get to see some college campuses that I would have never otherwise, or might not have ever otherwise seen. So that's kind of dope too.
So help me out, because I think one of the pushbacks initially is that we have it at a series of HBCUs. That means we're going to be on some former plantations and out in the middle of the sticks. I went to Prairie View A&M, and Prairie View is near Houston, but it's not Houston.
It's not Houston. It is not Houston.
So real quickly, have y'all kind of resolved how to navigate that?
No is the short answer. Look, I ain't gonna lie. I thought it was interesting that we went from Bethune, which is I think Daytona, I think I don't even remember where it is. Um, it was like all I remember is I flew into Orlando and had to drive an hour, so it was a little bit of boonies to North Baltimore, and some urbanization. So you know, we might be at Howard next year. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm just,
Well, there's
'cause-
plenty of HBCUs in major cities. You got Morehouse and
yes,
other
right,
schools, but
right,
still, it's like eventually you're gonna
exactly.
run out.
Eventually, you're gonna be in Tuskegee, Alabama. That's just what I'm saying.
Nothing wrong with Tuskegee, but it's a little bit of a. I mean, Alabama's way bigger than people think it is. It's like
Exactly. I'm like, folks will be like, "Can we go to Atlanta University?" I'm like, "Yep." I'm like, "Can we go to Atlanta University in that Marriott?" I'm like, "Where I can use my points." He's like, "Mm-hmm.
exactly,
Yes,
and that's
yeah."
the thing,
I
right?
like, I see you.
Yeah, because
And in all seriousness, I mean, the conundrum of all this really is you got a bunch of folks who have, earned excess degrees, have some spending power, and there's a choice point in all seriousness about where we are choosing as an organization to spend our dollars and lend our support. And
right,
so,
right.
the choice now is to try to support Black owned businesses. The major hotel for the conference is Black owned, or woman owned, so I mean, so I think there is a push maybe to try to be more consistent and congruent, um, between our behavior and our messaging. And I think
Yeah,
that's a good thing. I
yeah,
think that's
yeah.
a good
Of
thing.
course, of course. It's like you said, it's growing pains and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, hey, let's switch on to our topics for today. I think we have a nice series of topics. One of the things I wanted to do is honor young Black men and women who've been and boys and girls who've been unfortunately lost to, for lack of a better word, interesting in circumstances that are uncertain. And so went on to that, but specifically, I wanted to talk about Anthony Williams II. He's a young African American boy, 17 years old, who was shot and killed by the police here in Austin. I want to spend a little time talking about that and the implications around that. Then also want to talk about the video that we're gonna figure out this technology. We've only used it once or twice before, but talking about all male gyms, and the role they may or may not play in our society. Then I thought, and you brought this up, Lawrence. It was a good topic to align with. Was conversation that Ryan Clark, he's the former sportscaster over at ESPN, who recently lost his position there. But he talked about some really important, vulnerable, I think, topics about manhood, and we wanted to kind of review that. So we'll have hopefully have time to talk about that. And lastly, our side eye is going to be around Mitch McConnell, who technically I think is still alive, but there's been a lot of conversation about his whether he is or not, and also some of the myths around Lindsey Graham. And I get it; people don't like talking about ill of the dead, but he did some foul stuff that I think we wanted to kind of mention and talk about. But with that said, I want to get to our Djembe card real quickly. More out tradition, because we like to talk about different things, and I want to get to our engagement card. I think this is a good one.
Baltimore.
Baltimore. My experience with visual impairment is blank. My experience with visual impairment is blank. But we're both wearing glasses, so we're definitely impaired. But more than that, you want to go?
You know what? I'm gonna go. So my experience with visual impairment actually has been lifelong. My mom is blind in her left eye. I always have to think about it, and I always have to think about it because um, I never realized my mom had a disability. I mean, I knew she had a disability, but I never realized she had a disability because she's got 20/20 vision in her good eye. Um, she never thought of herself as a person, or at least never spoke to us about being a person with a disability. So my experience of it is kind of weird in that regard. It's like, oh yeah, like it might come up as a kid because somebody be like, oh, what's wrong with your mom's eye? Um, but you know, I didn't ever think about it. And to tell you kind of a ironic story. I was in graduate school when I was studying neuropsychology, and we were doing all this stuff about visual fields.
Mhm.
And one day, as we were talking about it, I closed my eye, which was the equivalent of her blind eye. And I was thinking about my mom, and I was like, "Oh, what can she actually see?"
Mm.
And it was really powerful because this whole sort of quarter of her visual field she doesn't have. And I was like, "Oh, wow." So I would say really horrible stuff now in retrospect, like, "Can't you see that?"
Mhm.
And I was doing this experiment, and I realized actually she probably couldn't, because it was outside of her visual field. And I
Okay.
felt really horrible, to be honest, because I was like, "Oh my god." I'm like, "You've been saying this forever." And I'm like, the reality is she probably actually couldn't see. I'm like, "Why aren't you?" I'm like, "Can't you see that? Like, you're not paying attention." And it's like, you might have been paying attention, but literally you can't see that. So that's my experience with it. And it's been sobering. Hopefully it's made me more aware of kind of general folks with generalized, disabilities of all sort, in that regard. So
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I've been around people who are vision impaired or blind throughout my life. But the one that was kind of stuck with me, of course, is one of my mother, because she was diabetic. And unfortunately, one of the negative consequences of diabetes, especially when it gets out of control, is loss of eyesight. Something about how the nervous system works behind the eye. Basically, the vessels start to bust and lose vision, nerve damage, all kinds of stuff. And
Mhm.
so, near the end of her life, she went from, having probably poor vision like me, wearing glasses, to having no vision. On top of that, the dementia, and other parts of her body. So slowly, what you saw was her body failing her, and
Mm.
the vision was just one of the many things that was happening. And so, I tell a lot of people all the time, people in our community, we talk about the sugar,
Sugar.
diabetes, and
Got that sugar.
we almost kind of, and I guess we do it because it lightens the load, but because the burden is heavy. And so
Yeah.
watching my mother kind of have her body just kind of deteriorate, and then she died when she was 62 years old, which is pretty young. Um,
Super young.
yeah. And so for me, just, having to attend to that and having no idea what it was like for her, because at that point she wasn't very mobile anyhow. So the vision. And so I don't know, and be honest, I wasn't even able to talk with her about it because she just was not verbal at that point. But I imagine it on some level being difficult just because it wasn't who she was, and she kind of felt
Mm.
like she wasn't the person she had been. But in some ways, sometimes she would sit there and just kind of be in her own place, and sometimes I wonder if that helped. I don't
Mm.
know. It's a weird way of thinking about it, but sometimes I feel like that. It just maybe kind of. I mean, whether it helped or not, I guess is less the issue, but more like just in being in a space she had to kind of figure out and sort through
Yeah.
on her own. Because I know she would felt lonely a lot of the time. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's funny that you said, because I was thinking, I was like, I wonder, loneliness was a word that kind of popped in my head as you were describing that. I'm like, or isolative at the least, right? And it's like, oh, I'm like, I wonder what that space was like, and especially when you're experiencing so much change.
Yeah, so
Um,
much in a relatively short amount of time too. So,
yeah.
so unfortunately, that was my experience, but it was more challenging for her, I imagine. So, but
God bless.
vision's a
God
thing, and
bless.
we gotta kind of pay attention to those things if we can. Some things we can prevent, other things we can't. The question is, how do we deal with them when they do manifest? So, um, cool. Well, hey, I want to switch over to talk about real briefly about. I think we hit on this before with Nolan Wells. He's a young boy who came up dead, unfortunately. We talked about it in the context of some of the jokes that have been made about how white folks don't have to worry about coming back home.
Right. With
But
they
I
black
wanted
friends.
to, where your black friends, you got to worry. Like, are they going to come home? But this is related because this is another young black boy, 17-year-old, who was shot and killed by the police. Um, Man, just it messes me up just thinking about it out loud. Um, the name is Anthony Williams II, 17 years old. And apparently he had called the police out. It was like 4:30 in the morning. He called it like he was a random person just calling, saying, "Hey, I see someone who looks like they might have a gun." At first, people thought it was someone else, some other neighbor. Found out it was actually him who had called on himself. So there's suspicions about the circumstances, whether it was something he was wanting to happen.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he had lost his mother, I think, within a year or two earlier. So we don't know what his status is, and I can't speak on that because I don't know, and there hasn't been more information about it. But I just wanted to acknowledge one, the shooting death of another young black boy in my community, which is important because last time we publicly had this kind of conversation here, well, there's been other shooting deaths, don't get me wrong, but 10 years ago, February of 2016, David Joseph was killed by police. Boy, he was having, again, potentially mental health issues, was running around the neighborhood with no clothes on, and was shot and killed with no weapon. Same thing with Anthony, no weapon on him, but had a water ball on him, and got the impression that maybe that's what they're saying, that maybe he had a weapon on him, but found no weapon on him, and had a water bottle on him. And so it's so heartbreaking. I'm having difficulty finding the right words, but I think as a community, folks are going to City Hall and protesting, and a lot of folks who are commenting on it, and it's just who I feel for is the parents. I met the mother of David Joseph. I've met the father of this young man, but I think he has an older sister. But it's heartbreaking to think about the loss of another young black boy who may have needed some help because it was 4:30 in the morning. So, people are going to say, why wasn't he home? He must have, I don't know what he was dealing with, but I don't like the consequences of the circumstance.
Right. How it was dealt with, you know, raises questions. I mean, I think what you're pointing out is just like there are consistent questions in these situations when young Black lives are lost, and that are, and a lot of them around, you know, is it fair and equal treatment, or is it, is the same level of care um, being given um, in these situations to Black and brown bodies,
Mhm.
and um, you know, it harms the soul. I mean,
Yeah,
there's
you're right. So, I mean,
just
there's the loss
another
of
young
him.
kid. Hmm.
Yeah, but we're all now impacted, not just here locally, but across the country. When we hear these
Absolutely.
kind of stories, we can't help but think of our own sons and nephews and daughters and others, family members. Because if he was having a mental health issue, if he did even call the police on himself, there's too many videos and circumstances that we all know of where we see a white person who's actually being violent,
Right.
belligerent, disrespectful, and the police finds a way of
Well,
creating a buffer, a means of de-escalating the circumstance. And they shot and killed this young man within 20 seconds of showing up.
wow.
And you could, and when you look at the video, unfortunately, it appears that he went for something in his waist. And I don't know the circumstances, but I guess where my frustration is that he's not the first person who's done that and didn't die as a result.
Right.
And I think that's what's heartbreaking about it. I want every child, black, white, you name it, Asian, you name it, who's in the, maybe they did call the police on themselves, and maybe they are feeling some kind of way, and I don't know, but that we shouldn't have to rely. People, I mean, the matter of fact, to say it was a suicide by police situation, the fact that's even a thing that we can coerce the police to
Right.
shoot
Right.
us
Right.
if we act a certain way. I'm not even talking about like having a gun or a knife and
Right.
brandishing and threatening people. I'm talking about people who just gesturing as if
It's
they
just
might.
they might. Right.
They
Right.
can
Right.
count on being shot and killed by
Right.
the police, particularly if
Right.
you're black or brown.
Exactly. Right. 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 Which says something wholly different. Right. It's like we are treated differently. We're not given the benefit of the doubt, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, so that is a very lethal thought if it's a thought that you have, to even pretend to go into your waistband as a Black or a brown child. Regardless of what you may or may not have. So it's, and there's a part of me that wants to say, and let's not go have that whole conversation about what he did, because
Right.
we always want to make it about,
Right.
the victim. He caused it, but I think, as you and I often allude to in these conversations, there is that. But the bigger question that we're not addressing is what is systemically going on in the society, and in this specific case with law enforcement, that there is this differential treatment that is happening, and with massively different impacts. When mass murderers, are taken into custody, and a child, with a water bottle is dead, as
And
my
I
mama would
guess
say, something ain't right about that.
something ain't right. And I'll be honest, I see pictures of this young man, and I'm a father, and I saw him, and he's just, man,
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I feel you.
mm, it's
Yeah.
too much. We shouldn't have to watch our kids dying like this. It's a lot.
Sorry for you and everybody in the Austin community, because, as you said,
Yeah, and I'll be honest,
shouldn't
it
be
makes the
happening.
other stuff feel a bit trivial.
Well, that's real
Uh,
talk too.
uh, you know, the friend neighborhood organizer, his name is Chaz Moore, and I saw one of his posts. He's just like, "Can y'all just shut up?" And I couldn't help but feel some of his frustration. I don't even know what he was talking about, but it was in general like, we got this boy getting killed over here. We can't even protect our own children from this kind of nonsense, and we over here screaming and hollering about nonsense. I had this
Oh,
guy
nonsense.
who was calling me out on social media about some bull. I was like, block. I'm not dealing with you today.
Not today. Not
It's not.
today.
No, you're not even saying anything important. You just
Click.
hi.
Yep. Yep.
So
Yeah.
I just wanted to focus on this because
I appreciate it.
it's important, and we need to watch out for our children and our communities as best we can. And 10 years ago, I think many of us was hoping that this, how they say, never again.
Again, right.
And here we are again.
Very hard. Yeah, I mean, things, hopefully things are moving, unfortunately, maybe slowly, but, the incremental pace of change is such that you're like, tens to hundreds of thousands of lives will be lost in the process. And so, we really do need to be thinking about how do we catapult, if change is afoot, how do we catapult that
Right.
in a way that really, is saving lives of hundreds, not building upon the hundreds and thousands that have already died. So
Yeah.
mm.
Well, I think another topic that's I think to our on our hearts of sorts is this conversation around brother Ryan Clark. I want to share the video that's been kind of going around about him. You see the video there?
Did it. All right, technology man. Very impressive.
I'm the one who used to make the put the time on the VCR, so I'm staying ahead of the curve.
You got
So let's
skills. You got
let's
skills.
let's take a moment to listen to this, and it's about a couple minutes long, and then we'll talk about it. Is that cool?
Yep.
Bro, you got 5-minute shifts. Get fired halfway through that job.
Hey, Jack, crazy, right? Hey,
Where'd the other box go?
yeah. So let me put this to bed. I wasn't laid off. I was fired. They're using layoffs as a cover and a camouflage for what they already intended on doing, but there was no cause for it. So because there was no cause for it, you couldn't just fire me. So you had to wait to the layoff so you could camouflage it and veil it, right? But here's the other thing. If I was laid off, like everybody else, they came out on Tuesday. Mine came out on Friday. I get the call. I get a text from our showrunner that tells me to call my boss. I call my boss in the break, tells me they're letting me go. He said, this is a very awkward call. This is a hard call. I could hear how hard it was for him. And if anybody was going to call me that was anywhere on the executive level, whether low or high, he's the person I wanted to. The way he's fought for me and rode for me. And he said, our friends, jokingly, at Outkick had the story and we're going to leak it. Let me tell you why I know I was fired. Because during the season, after some of the Kyron Lacy news broke, there were people on our network along with me that said something about it. Both of those people apologized, as did I. I didn't want to. And I was told I couldn't come to work if I didn't. And at that point, I said, well, I can't come to work tomorrow because I don't believe I did anything wrong. Some conversations happened and we got to that point. And Outkick wrote an article about all the people that apologized, two very prominent faces at ESPN. And they praised them for who they were and how they brought this thing back around. And they bashed me, talked about how negative I was and spoke about me in such a nasty way. And I sent an email and I was very poignant in saying, you have to watch who you listen to about me. There's certain people who want to paint me as a certain thing, certain people who want to devalue my voice, certain people who, no matter what I do, with all the great I've done, they've never mentioned that. But in this case, there are three people who are very important to this network, who all did the same thing, who all responded in the same way. And only one of us was vilified, and only one of us was a Black man. And so how poignant, how purposeful is it to make sure that that's the exact same publication that gets the story that I'm going to be fired? Because you know what they're going to do? They're going to praise ESPN. They're going to pump ESPN up for getting rid of the person who stands up for the community. And they're going to say that these are all the reasons why I didn't belong on TV in the first place.
And I show that part of the video because this leads into, I think, another part of the conversation between those three men and the vulnerability that he starts to begin to have about what it's like for him. The experience he has is kind of him being challenged. And him, basically starts crying. He's really upset about this because this is personal. He's been with the organization for, I think, over a decade, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. And he just gets really vulnerable and really people and there's some, I think most people are very encouraging and supportive and appreciate you sharing that vulnerability. There's been others who've been a bit on the critical side because they're not comfortable with a Black being vulnerable, talking about what it was like for him. Forget the debate about fire, not fire. It's about the vulnerability that he shows in that moment with his I'm assuming friends, colleagues, in something that's actually very devastating. And somehow we're supposed to just soak that shit up and just be strong. And I just think it's, I don't know. I watched the extended version of this and it was a very impassioned discussion on their part. I mean, the mere fact that we're even willing to have the conversation.
That they were willing to have the conversation. And maybe we'll show that the second part of that because I thought it was super important because he not only talks about kind of having been fired, but he also is vulnerable to say maybe along this journey I've made some mistakes, or things I could have done differently. And it's interesting because in that piece he talks a lot about things that I've seen in my coaching life with Black executives. Many of the things that he talked about are exactly things that especially Black male executives, and Black female executives too, but Black male executives have talked about, like this sense of, networking and what that might have done for my career, and how might I have done that, and that maybe that was a mistake in retrospect, but also speaking truth. And last time we were talking, we talked about that idea of presence, but authenticity and presence as being rebellion. And, I will draw the parallel with Ryan Clark and what he's saying in that Ryan Clark is nothing but authentic in his presentation on ESPN or what he was. He was Ryan Clark, unabashed, and also one of the absolute top one analysts, in my opinion, on pro football. He's brilliant. And authentic. And in being brilliant and being authentic, there was a cost to that. I think the cost isn't for Ryan as a person. Ryan Clark as a human being, I think, is okay. There was an impact potentially to his career at ESPN because he was that authentic. And I think that's a conundrum that many people, and I would say regardless of race, everybody has to make some decisions around how authentic they are going to be
Right.
in
In
work.
this world.
And frankly, and I think you and I have even talked about this, I don't believe anybody at work is 100% authentic. Nor do I
Probably
think they
shouldn't be.
should be. They should, right? There is a cost to it. But the more authentic you are, the better it is for you and your own emotional health. And frankly, it augurs better for your leadership to be more authentic as well. So, but his, I don't want to get lost in that. His humanity, just like your humanity 5 minutes ago in talking about the young man in Austin and the impact that it's had on you is not just real, but I think it's important. Um, young folks who might listen to this podcast and get to see two Black men being human matters, right? This is the breadth of what it means to be human. You laugh, you joke, you cry. That's humanness, and that's powerful. And that's being comfortable in your own skin. So I applaud Ryan, and I applaud you. I think it's, and I know you weren't trying to do anything other than just be human.
Right.
You know?
Well, and I think sometimes people will see something like what Ryan Clark did. I mean, so and I'm sorry we didn't get the other part of the video, but he gets very emotional. He's very caught up in his emotions. He stops. He's unable to speak. But instead of not speaking and apologizing for his emotions, which is what we commonly do in these situations, because we don't want to make other people uncomfortable, right? We're trying to be polite, right? But he's with his friends. You just have the privilege to watch him, right? And he shares really, I think, vulnerably what it was like for him. I mean, and like he said, he was fired. They can clean it up as best they can and call it a layoff. I've been there. But here he is being fired. He has to think about his family. He has to think he has bills to pay too. And it's rough out there in these streets. And so I'll be honest, I watched this when I first saw the video. I thought about the 500,000 Black women lost their job, whether it be in government, private sector. I think about all the people struggling. It's real out there. People say, well, just get you another job. You have to, make sure you use your network. I'm like, I've called every person I can think of.
Everybody.
Yeah. Oh, and this is the thing, as when you're in a situation like that, you start calling around. They're like, shoot, I'm looking for a job.
Girl,
can you help me?
Right. They got my department too. I'm like, I'm out here. Let me know what you hear.
Help me. How about
help me? Help me.
Yeah, I highly want to encourage people to watch this video because he really, and like you said, he's someone who's been around for a while. He's well respected. You can agree or disagree with whatever he says, but look at your boy Stephen A. Smith saying the most ridiculous stuff. He still got a job. So don't tell me about what he did wrong or not.
But that's a part of the messaging, right? It's like, I think Brian even speaks to it. It's like, we're not trying to throw shade at Stephen, but he's like, well, look who kept their jobs.
Yes.
The most bombastic, ridiculous, not thoughtful people. Frankly, people who are playing caricatures on TV.
Right.
Those are people who get rewarded. Being real in this instance isn't really rewarded. And some I'm sure will say, but if that's what the market says, sure, that's a part of what the market says. But we, especially as consumers, don't have to accept that, and
Right.
I'll throw in, I'm looking at 60 Minutes, a program that I used to watch religiously. I don't know what I'm gonna be doing at Sunday at 6, but it probably ain't watching 60 Minutes.
Sure ain't. And that's another situation. That's just ridiculous. Right? We have to talk about that as another side eye, but let me get to this one. This is a video I came across online talking about the idea of a all-male gym. And what I want to leave open to folks hearing about is the reason why they think should have an all-women all men's gym. You ready for it?
Y'all need to listen close, y'all.
Came across my feed, and I knew that I had to read the whole article because I had a feeling that this would be the most closeted MAGA man thing ever. And the article did not disappoint. This was the article: Men only gyms seek to protect Christian men from lust. And these men who open these gyms in this article are presenting it under the guise of that they cannot work out in a regular gym because there's too many naked women there and it's making them so lustful. One man couldn't keep his eyes off the women so much that he had to quit 4 gyms. And another guy couldn't stop cheating on his wife because, the gym, there's ladies there and they can't control themselves, just as any good Christian man. But then in reading their quotes, it sounded more like they didn't really lust after the women as much as they said. Maybe that wasn't the reason they opened these. I'm going to read the quotes and let you be the judge. One of the men who opened one of those men-only gyms is Mitch Parsons. And Mitch was sick of being in gyms where nakedness was shoved in his face. And he dreams of, quote, a place where Christian men gather, sharpen each other, and are formed under the fear of the Lord. His vision is for men to sharpen each other in brotherhood. And he suggests that real sharpening requires daily proximity to other faithful men who refuse to let you drift. And Jeff Hambridge here, who opened another one of those gyms, says that his gym is a place, quote, where men step back into brotherhood, where friction is welcomed, accountability is normal, and growth is expected. He sees himself as helping men grow hard as iron by creating friction. Men are not being led out there, he says. God's called me to be a leader. I'm going to lead some men to God. I bet you are, Jeff. So in conclusion, I don't think they were lusting after the women. No, I think they were lusting for something else. Keep in mind, these are the men who go to those conservative conventions like CPAC and shut down Grindr. So
There's that.
Let's be clear. We don't care. I'll speak for myself. I don't care if these men are gay. If they were gay, do you?
Whatever.
If you
Live your life. Right.
Whatever your life
your
is,
life.
no one
God
cares.
bless you. Right.
But I wanted to talk about it because I was like, I remember my days playing football. It used to be the dudes. We out there, doing guy stuff. When I go to the gym, even today, most people in there are dudes anyhow. So there's a certain energy and vibe that you oftentimes see.
Right.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Matter of fact, I know a lot of guys who go places where they feel, for whatever reason, more comfortable, whatever.
Sure.
Nothing wrong with that. And if they need to have all male gyms just because they want all male gyms, then have your all men gyms. But this
Back to
is
something else.
sus. This is so sus. Well, and just doing this reminds me when I watched The Hunchback of Notre Dame when it was a Disney version of it. This idea that men couldn't control themselves when women acted a certain way, where they had their clothing that hugged their bodies. And
Right.
I'm so vulnerable. I had to cheat on my wife 4 different times. Because I couldn't control myself. It's unreasonable to think that I, as a man, should be held accountable. Because you know what? Instead of that, I'm just not going to expose myself. And remember, the Vice President of the United States had the same attitude. He's like, I can never have a meeting one-on-one with a woman. I must have the door open and have another person in the room with me if I'm going to meet with a woman. And I'm like, is this about you? Is it about your wife? What is this about? They don't trust you? What have you done?
What have you done? Right. And hey, there is a thing called self-control. I'm like, you should learn it. It's like, and again, you are blaming women who, by the way, are minding their own damn business at the gym.
Yes, ain't studying you.
They ain't thinking a bit about your dumb ass. Clearly you aren't focusing on your gym workout. You're looking at her body, distracting yourself, and then to make some weird causation of that to why you're cheating on your wife. You just cheating on your wife. Let's stop making excuses for your BS. But this whole men can't control themselves thing is just stop yourselves. Stop yourselves.
And what's such a contradiction, right? On one level, you have men talking about accountability, right? Taking care
Right.
of their households, being financially viable, having a career or business that achieves certain things, and working hard, playing hard, blah, blah, blah. I mean, all that accountability. But somehow we are so weak and beguiled by women, and they have this power over us that we can't make decisions. I just couldn't help myself. You know, she was so fine. I lost myself. I'm like, she ain't
Gross.
nobody that fine. Ain't Halle Berry on her best day. I'm sorry.
Right.
Even if I met her in person, I've met other fine women, famous ones, and I look at them and say, you know, and I get it. You know, you have a number of people who say when they met somebody famous or pivotal in their lives, you know, they saw an aura about them, a glow.
Mhm.
You know, I get it. You know, you see someone, you're like, whoa.
You got it.
About her, but
And I'm gonna go cheat on my wife because of it. With somebody who ain't even them.
And you know what? I think I would be disturbed if someone saw him and said, "Cause he came, there's something about you." I just couldn't control myself.
Your aura.
We
right?
gotta hit it. We gotta hit it,
got
guys.
Right.
I'm like, you know what? I don't know when I'm gonna be able to get rid of this chick.
Right, exactly. You're like, first thought is like stalker. You're like, I'm good. I'm
The
good.
energy ain't good.
Right.
I mean, wait a minute. You
No.
can't control yourself. That's why
Right.
you're at my
You're
front door uninvited.
Right. Exactly. Right. Is like, okay. I'm like, I'm a little scared of you right now. I'm like,
I mean, I know
yeah.
Dr. James, you probably had a couple people like, Dr. James, there's something about you.
Yeah, no. I don't have that aura. I don't have that at all. At all. Although my friend says to me, she goes, Lawrence. She's like, you know you're good looking, right? And I was like, no. I was like, I think I'm pretty smart, but no, that's not really my thing. She's like, oh, these women are lusting after you. And I was like, really? I was like, and I'm not joking. I was like, yeah, I if it happened, I was like, I didn't notice. I was like, I noticed that she wasn't really very bright, and that was a boring ass conversation. That's what I noticed. So, you know, she's like, you don't know how much you missed out on. And I was like, I guess. I was like, well, if I didn't notice it, then it wasn't really anything that I missed out on. So I'm like, but
and that's the thing I think people miss, right? So let's say all these things are correct, right?
all of it could be
Let's say
true.
you have the aura, good looks, blah blah blah. What I hear you talking about, and I identify with what you're saying, it don't matter because if you acting dumb or doing some dumb mess or you involved with some messiness or whatever it is, I mean, I remember one of the finest girls in my high school. I mean, we talking about fine. Matter of fact, next to her picture in my yearbook, she wrote the word what? Fine, Fine. Next to her own picture. That's how fine she was, right?
That was her name. Fine. Right.
But she had such a piss poor attitude at that point. I like to believe these many years later that she's, you know, found herself and is not the same person. Let's believe that, at least for my sanity.
You're hoping. We'll find out at the next reunion.
You know, I haven't seen her, so you know, I won't know. And then a couple of people who were fine, we will not find no more.
They're not fine no
Subject, so let's be clear. I'm not the person I was 100 years ago
Right.
either. So, however, she just has piss poor attitude, right? And so it's disappointing to hear that people don't have like they can't be responsible for their own behavior. That they somehow, you know, I don't know. I was watching this video going. Again, the idea of all men's gym is like, okay, we can do some man
Right.
stuff and, you know, cool, create a space. You know, women,
right. But you
women have
add the
gyms for them
Christian,
too, right?
absolutely. Mostly for their safety against
There's different
men.
reasons,
So
right?
let's add that in. But the piece, you know, if you just said to your point, I just want an all male gym. Okay, cool, fine. But when you add in the Christianity piece, and this is, don't hit us up about we being anti-Christian. This is not about Christianity per se, but it's like you use that as a ruse for, you know, for an all male space because you have no self-control. I'm like,
You know,
that's a
you women.
weird connection to me.
But the part for me is because it's because women are basically the devil, and they're
That's Sheba up in
beguiling.
there, up in there tempting your ass,
Here
and
we
you
go.
got nothing, right? You got nothing. You just gotta succumb. Like seriously, come on, men. Let's be better than that, you know. And as girlfriend laughed at them for the sheer stupidity. Now her veiled homosexual comments, you know, in there was, you know, maybe a bit much, but you know, I was like, yeah, that was a little cringeworthy. But her broader point about y'all really ain't taking responsibility for your own behavior. And I think, look, I think that's unfortunately there's a piece and a thread that's running through this country right now, especially amongst men, of not actually, ironically, they say they want to be accountable, but not taking any account or any responsibility for your own behavior and your own actions.
Right,
It's always somebody else's fault. You
right.
know, it's DEI's fault.
Yeah.
It's women's fault. It's somebody else's fault for why I'm not succeeding, why I'm digressing, regressing, you know, and where's the self-awareness? Where's the work on, I mean, like you working on your biceps, you know, how about you work on your heart and your soul and your mind, you know, leave the dumbbell alone, dummy. And go read a book or do something else, or maybe even as you're reading your Bible, maybe actually read the Bible. Just go to the part that has the 10 Commandments in it. I think one of them says something along the lines of, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife.
Yeah.
And I think there's another one about y'all ain't supposed to cheat on her or something like that. You just take them too, Mr. Christian. You don't even need a whole gym. Just actually, you know, other than having the tattoo of the 10 Commandments on your arm and not actually knowing what it says, how about you actually circle it and actually read the shit and then go live by it?
Well, this is the crazy thing, and you mentioned this. See, there were some cringeworthy aspects of her post where you're like, I hope she's not hating on the homosexual community or homosexual men, gay men. But I would like to believe the reason she's bringing it up because these men tend to be very homophobic.
Yes.
And tend to say and do things that are bashing the LGBTQ community, just and you know, calling people who cry as weak and empathy. I mean, this whole slew of things, right? All that stuff is gay, right? Yet they seem to be doing and saying and behaving things that seem suspiciously, you know, homoerotic in some ways or another.
Yeah. Well, you know, you just made me remember too. That whole thing was very sort of manosphere-like. You know, I hadn't thought about it until you just said it, but I was like, oh, this sort of harkens back to when we were talking about the manosphere stuff. You know, I mean,
this is very much
some weird combination of Christianity and hypermasculinity, and blaming, you know, and dehumanizing women for, you know, male transgressions. So it's like,
right,
you know, like, well, what? Again, let's start with you fix yourself. Therapy is good.
Yes,
Therapy is really
but the right kind of therapist, not these therapists who you know, supporting the nonsense.
Exactly.
Out there. And this is the last thing I'll say. I understand and appreciate, myself being one of them. There are times, maybe for some people more times than not, where they prefer the company of men, and it's not a romantic relationship, right? It's a preference to be around a culture, a way of being that's in this culture is very masculine and male oriented, and they prefer those spaces in general, you know. Absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with that, nothing at all. The problem is preferring that, and on top of that, bashing other groups of people in the process as the rationale for why you can't be who you want to be. Go be you, bro. No one stopping you. Matter of fact, all your privileges if you receive does not prevent you from doing any of those things. Not one. But here you are.
Here you are. And again, I'll say this the last time. The lack of self-awareness and self-insight will always prevent you from doing any of the stuff that you say, because you actually don't know yourself well enough to actually know what you want or what you're actually doing. So all this shit it's performative to prevent you from doing the thing that you really need to do, which is introspection.
You should come up with a new song, like from the 70s. Introspection.
Well, that actually sounded like schoolhouse rock right there. Introspection, 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 introspection.
Hey, they
Gotta like spell it out.
All you
That
do,
could
all you
have
do
been, a schoolhouse rock jam right there,
Yeah.
right?
Put
Introspection,
Luther
right?
on it. Put Luther Vandross on that. He can
Right?
play that.
Exactly.
That's James Ingram.
Right.
Well, last thing, and then we'll get off here. This is our
We are
side eye.
stupid. Right. I think we
Side
side
eye.
eye ourselves. It's like, ooh, we stupid. Oh my God.
Side eye is, it's sad because, Lindsey Graham, the senator from South Carolina, who replaced Strom Thurmond, the most racist person in the world at the time, came in to serve as the long-term senator from South Carolina. And he died, unfortunately, unexpectedly. I think he had some heart issues. And they buried him finally yesterday. And I'm for the family and friends and people who have relationships with him, God bless you all, and let's not rewrite history.
Right.
These folks is talking about him like he's walking on water, I'm like, wait a minute, this fool, come on, man. You didn't talk about the president when you were running against him as the worst person. Everything you said about him was true when you said it.
Was true. Right.
Talked about your best friend, who was a war hero, brother from Arizona.
John McCain. John McCain.
Yeah, John McCain. Yeah, and talked about him. Talking about he wasn't. He I believe in people who don't get caught. Said the worst things about John McCain, your best friend, and then you turn around and lick his boots for your own political gain.
Right.
And I'm like, I get it. There's things you want to fight for, and you want to fight for, Ukraine and blah, blah, blah. This, and so for you, this is the way of, getting things done. But bruh, really? He talked about you so bad.
Dog.
And now unfortunately you're gone, and I'm sorry to hear you're gone. But I don't want to rewrite history because you represent some of the worst things when it came to reproductive health, about the Black-brown experience around immigration. He said and supported things that were awful for our country. He's an updated version of Strom Thurmond, basically.
Yes, reprehensible, kinds of things, and again, this sort of repairing. And I think it's consistent with what we were just talking about, because there's a piece of this sort of campaign to, sanctify Lindsey is the same stuff about like lack of introspection, and real ownership and accountability for what you have done and how you have been in the world, because you're not in isolation. Decisions, choices that you're making actually have real world impacts and real world harms that you're not, in my mind, owning.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you don't have to agree with me politically on that, but there's a line, I think, where we could say that's actually, and again, you're supposedly a Christian too. The things that you're advocating are largely anti-Christian.
Yeah,
they're anti-human sort of choices and behaviors in policy, but you're a good Christian. I was like, again, you might want to go read the Bible that you are always thumping in our faces. You actually might want to open some of the pages.
Well, and I guess what's crazy about it, I suggested bringing up Mitch McConnell too, because unfortunately he's been ill. He had some kind of event at his home, and he's older. He's 84 years old. He's had some health issues and stuff. So there's been people playing around saying they think he might actually be dead. And I'm like, that feels, for me personally, feels kind of bad, because I'm like, don't make fun of old people like that. He's old, and saying he's dead. This doesn't feel good. But he's also, his legacy has been of doing terrible things. He was one of the major forces against Obama. I mean, he's the one talking about him wearing a tan suit and all other kinds of idiotic things that he's been a part of. And one of the things I thought about when you were saying, we were talking, I was like, is there a way when you look at your legacy in your life, so whether you're Lindsey Graham, Mitch McConnell, or even Ryan Clark, where you can go back and look and say, this part I feel really good about. That made a difference. This other part, I could have done something different, And Ryan Clark shows you that in that interview that we're talking about.
Yes.
He says, maybe if I had done this, and maybe if I had done that. And I think that's, for me, I feel like that's a more honest reflection. So we're going to talk about Lindsey Graham or Mitch McConnell or other people who I personally vehemently disagree on things. I just would appreciate more honest, transparent reflection on someone's life, as if it's actually there's been human error.
Right.
And we don't have to agree on the things you messed up on.
No, but an acknowledgement. But I love that piece that you're talking about, that, because again, the reference to Ryan Clark is really a reference to introspection. I mean, to be able to say, I didn't do everything exactly right. I could have done some things differently that may have, it wasn't even that I did something wrong. It was like, I could have done some things differently that might have led to a different outcome. I mean, that's really what that exercise to me is about, but it's also an exercise in self-examination and self-honesty, I mean, and maybe if there's any takeaway from the conversation today, it's that. It's like, hey, and this is not just for men, it's for, everybody, an ounce of introspection goes a long way, and if you are finding that you cannot be honest with yourself about who and what you are, you need to look at that. And if it ain't going to the therapist, maybe it's going to your priest, maybe it's reading more, whatever it is you need to do, but being able to get to a place where you can look at yourself as honestly as any of us can and be like, I did some really good shit. I did some okay shit. And yeah, in a couple of places, I actually did some real fucked up shit, and I'm going to try to do the good and not replicate the bad.
Right.
I mean,
right. And the truth is, your introspection you're talking about, I think requires one, humility.
Yes.
Because I don't have all the answers, and maybe I need to think about this from a different perspective, but also requires vulnerability.
Yes.
And for a lot of people, I think that's the struggle, is that, and I get it, when you're in a position of power and authority like Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell, arrogance can take you a long way. But I would like to believe in the private moments with your family, friends, and prayer, or wherever, that you take moments to be have humility and be vulnerable. Even if the only person you're being vulnerable, only one, not person, but only one you're vulnerable is with God, or with your higher power, or whatever it is. Somewhere, God dog it.
Yeah. And the thing that we've talked about before, it's that introspection, and what I would hope for all folks, because it's implied in what we're saying, but I want to be explicit about it, is with that introspection and learning from that self-honesty begets action.
A different action, right?
A different action, right? Given what I now know about me and how I have done or have not done, let me try to behave thus and so.
Right.
That is more congruent with what I say I believe in and the person that I want to be in life.
Right.
Because it's not just good enough to be like, I'm aware I'm an asshole. Great. So are we.
Right.
Would you like to change that, sir, ma'am?
Right. Because there's some people.
Because if you do, the rest of us are a whole lot better off. And some
Right,
people
well,
don't give a shit.
yeah, some people are like, I mean, Trump is like, I'm not as good as Eric Kirk. I really hate people. I'm like, he's not aspiring to do anything better.
No,
He's like, nah,
no.
I hate them MFers. I'm gonna treat them accordingly. I'm like,
Right.
bruh, we all knew that, but okay.
Right. Right. And hopefully that's not most of the world. Hopefully most of the world is like, ooh,
I think most
I'd
people are
like to
like,
be I'd like to be better than that. You know?
well, I think they saw that as like, I may have behaved that way before, but I don't like how it looks. It looks
Yeah, that's
beautiful.
a bad look. You're like, that's a super bad look. Like,
Well, Dr. Lawrence James, my brother, you're over there in Baltimore at the
Baltimore.
Association of Black Psychologists Conference.
Black
I hope you
psychologists.
enjoy.
Trying to be
Uh,
introspective. I'm gonna be introspective for like, the next 3 or 4 days. I'm gonna talk to everybody that I meet about. I'm gonna go talk to some heroin addicts on the street and be like, hey, you should be more introspective about this.
like I am introspective. I've been introspective for the last 7 years on this heroin.
That's right. On this heroin. I'm like, where's the clarity?
That's the problem. Lack of clarity.
That's right. Right. Exactly. This is not good. So, but anyway, I'm gonna enjoy Baltimore. I'm gonna get some crab cakes.
Yeah, have that while you have out there, brother, because we don't get
My
much of that
man's
here in
told me
Austin.
that Coco's, just a shout out, never been, but if Coco is watching, my shout out is somebody told me you had the best crab cakes in Baltimore. I'm gonna try to come by your spot. I ain't asking for a hookup, but I'm just giving you a shout out because you're supposed to have good crab cakes. So we gonna see.
Okay, when you show up, this is what when you go to the counter, this is what you should say. How
All right.
much is one crab cake?
Right. One.
Just one.
Right. Right.
Not-
Although,
not a
if you get
whole
the
one.
but if you get that Maryland crab cake though, that thing is like ginormous. So I'm like, all you need is one. I'm like, why is this $22? And I'm like, man, that was a whole meal in that thing. So
Oh, little
Yeah.
crabs.
right. Poor little crabs. I don't know how many crabs that was to make that one crab cake, but
Well, hey, brother, it's good to see you. I hope you have
Always
a great
great to
time
see you,
in
brother.
Baltimore.
Enjoy the rest
Hey,
of
is
your
our friend Dr. Helm there? Is she out somewhere else?
He got smart. She's out in California
Ah,
enjoying some sun and fun.
all right.
Writing and hopefully drinking a couple of glasses of wine. So I'm a
I
little
see.
jelly. I'm a little jelly. I'm like, and she's probably gonna listen to this. So I'm like, I hope you're laughing because I'm upset and mad because I'm not with you getting a little vino.
Tell her I said, where's my invite? I want to go to California. I want to do things. I want to sit on the beach. I want to get my browning and get
You do. I know we got to go, but do you remember this? One of the first times we ever hung out was me, you, and Dr. Helm, and we were going up by I forgot what the little town was because I think you had family that was there,
Oh,
and you were
yeah.
driving us through San Francisco.
Oh, that's right. That's
up
right.
to
That's right.
like trying to find, was it the neighborhood that you had grown in, or like
Oh,
your
yeah, it
dad
was
had been there or something?
Tiburon. I was trying to find Tiburon.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That was the
Good time.
first
That was a good
time.
one.
Yeah, that was the first time we ever really hung out.
Yeah,
So,
that was like 100 years ago now, right?
man, I think we both
Yeah,
still had
no.
hair back then.
Yeah. Did I have locks back then? I can't remember. I think I might have locks. I don't know.
You might have. I remember you having hair back then. I don't remember if you had locks or not, but you had hair.
Yeah,
That's
I
how
was
long.
going, when the hair starts to lose and you start doing
Right.
Bernie Mac
Right.
stuff and Steve Harvey stuff.
Right. Painted in,
All right, brother. It was good seeing you and enjoy
Always good
yourself.
to see you, my brother.
I'll see you next
Absolutely.
week. All right.
Sounds like a plan. Have a great rest of your week.